The phone vibrated on the glass table as I finished going over the quarterly reports. Rivercrest Industries, a 23% growth compared to last year. 50 million in projected annual revenue. Figures that seemed impossible when I took the COO job 12 years ago, back when we were just a regional manufacturer struggling to stay relevant. Jessica, your dad wants everyone in the conference room in 15 minutes. Kevin, my assistant, announced from the doorway. It sounds important. I adjusted my navy blazer and organized the documents on the table. The meeting wasn't on my schedule, but that was typical of my dad. Richard Mitchell didn't bother with appointments, he just called everyone, and they showed up. Subscribe to the channel and hit like to get access to more stories like this. When I walked into the conference room, I noticed that all the directors were there, which was unusual. Emily, our CFO and my closest ally, raised her eyebrows subtly when our eyes met. My younger brother, Mark, was sitting to my dad's right, grinning like a kid who just won a prize at the amusement park. Thanks for joining us today, my dad began, his voice full of the confidence of someone who built an empire from scratch. I have an important announcement. After a lot of thought, I've decided it's time to pass the leadership baton to the next generation. My heart started to race. Finally. 12 years of turning a struggling company into an international powerhouse. Sleepless nights spent developing our proprietary automation system. Countless international trips to set up strategic partnerships. It had all led to this moment. It gives me great pleasure to announce that Mark Mitchell will be the new CEO of Rivercrest Industries, effective next month. The room went silent. Or maybe it was just me. Mark was smiling and accepting congratulations while my world silently crumbled. My brother, who spent the past 4 years in the marketing department after college. My brother, who has never led a team larger than 5 people. My brother, who can't even explain how the system that kept us competitive works. Jessica has done an exceptional job as COO and will remain instrumental to the company's success in that role, my dad added, as if to offer consolation. I forced a smile for the rest of the meeting. I shook my brother's hand. I accepted the empty words of sympathy from my colleagues. But inside, something fundamental had broken. "This is ridiculous," Emily whispered once we were alone in my office. "You transformed this company. The automation system you developed is the reason we're even relevant today. Seems like 12 years of dedication don't count for much compared to having the right last name and the right genes," I replied, surprised by the calm in my voice. That night, I stayed up late reviewing my employment contract and the intellectual property agreements. Laura Harrison, a corporate lawyer I knew from college, took my call even though it was so late. "Interesting," she said after looking over the documents I sent. "The system was developed under your direct supervision using your own resources at first. The company later adopted the project, but there's no formal transfer of the IP rights. Legally, you're in a very strong position." The next day, I asked for a private meeting with my dad. His office on the top floor had always intimidated me, even after all these years. "What can I do for you, Jessica?" he asked, without leaving his chair. "Why, Mark? I want to understand your reasoning." He sighed as if he were explaining basic math to a child. "Mark has the vision to take Rivercrest to the next level. Besides, this company was always meant to stay in the Mitchell family. I am a Mitchell. You are. But one day you're going to get married, have kids, and your priorities will change. Mark will carry the family name on to the next generation." His words hit me like a slap. No matter how dedicated or competent I was, I'd never be seen as the future of the company simply because I'm a woman. "I understand. In that case, I have some news. I'm resigning, effective immediately. And I'm taking with me the rights to the automation system I developed." My dad's face paled. "You can't do that." "I can and I will. Check with your lawyers." "Oh, and Sarah Reynolds, our software architect, is leaving too. And so are Kevin, Emily, and probably half the engineering department." I got up and walked to the door, feeling a mix of terror and freedom I'd never experienced before. Phoenix Automation Systems, I said, turning once more. That will be the name of my new company. And unlike Rivercrest, Phoenix will be built on merit, not on family names. 3 weeks later, our team was working at a frantic pace in the temporary offices we rented downtown. The space wasn't as grand as Rivercrest's headquarters, but it buzzed with energy and purpose. Glass panels divided our workstations while Sarah and her team refined the automation system, now rebranded as Phoenix Core. We've got confirmation from Peterson Global for the presentation next Wednesday, Kevin announced as he walked into my makeshift office with a smile. Peterson Global, the biggest client at Rivercrest and potentially the first major client for Phoenix. Their CEO, William Anderson, had sent me a personal message after I left the family company, saying he was interested in what I was working on. Kevin, we need this presentation to be perfect, I said. Peterson isn't just a potential client, it's a statement. Emily walked in holding her tablet. I just updated our financial projections. If we bring on Peterson, other companies will follow. We might even turn a profit sooner than we thought. And what do we know about Rivercrest? I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. Emily hesitated. According to my sources, they're trying to replicate our system with a new team. Mark hired a few external consultants with industrial automation experience. How long would it take to build something like that from scratch? I asked. With the complexity of what we built? At least a year, even with an elite team, Sarah replied from the doorway. And that's assuming they fully understand what they're trying to replicate. Which they don't, Emily added. Mark is insisting on leading the transition himself. It seems he doesn't want to admit he's in over his head. A part of me felt a small thrill at Mark's troubles, but I tried to push that thought away. Phoenix couldn't be built solely on revenge, it had to mean something bigger. James Wilson just called, Kevin said, checking his notes. It looks like Rivercrest's sales department is in crisis. He wants to know if we have room for him. James? I asked in surprise. I thought he was loyal to my dad. Apparently, Mark fired him yesterday after a disagreement over how to handle key accounts. That changed everything. James had been the VP of sales at Rivercrest for 8 years. He knew every contract, every customer relationship, every little detail about the negotiations. Tell him to come in tomorrow at 9 and ask him to bring his contact list and a summary of vulnerabilities in the key accounts, I decided. On the eve of our Peterson Global presentation, our team was putting the finishing touches on everything. There was an air of anticipation mixed with nerves. Laura Harrison, our lawyer, was going over the legal documents for the 3rd time. We're completely protected, she assured us. We made sure not to use any proprietary material from Rivercrest. The system was recreated from scratch, keeping only the core ideas that are their intellectual property. Sarah made the final adjustments to the demo system. Phoenix Core is running 37% faster than the version we had at Rivercrest. We optimized the code and added those improvements your dad always thought were unnecessary. At 2 in the morning, when we finally sent everyone home, I was alone in the office. The city lights shone through the window as I thought about the path I had chosen. It wasn't just about proving my worth to my dad or getting even, it was about building something truly my own. My phone vibrated, a message from my dad, there's still time to come back. The team is struggling without you. Mark needs your support. Family above all. I turned off the phone without replying. The next morning, dressed in my new grey suit, I drove to the Peterson Global headquarters. The imposing glass and steel building reflected the morning sun as I parked. Emily, Sarah, and James arrived in another car. Ready to change everything? Emily asked as we walked toward the entrance. Born ready, I replied, with a confidence I didn't even know I had. The Peterson conference room was spacious, with a panoramic view of the river. William Anderson greeted us personally, his firm handshake conveying respect. Jessica, I was intrigued by your sudden departure from Rivercrest. I've known your work for years and have always been impressed. Thanks, William. I believe sometimes you have to follow your own path to reach your full potential. Interesting, he said, gesturing toward the seats. Especially since we had a presentation from Rivercrest just last week. Your brother assured us that the transition would be smooth and that the system would keep running perfectly. James gave me a meaningful look. Mark was making promises he couldn't keep. Over the next 2 hours, we presented Phoenix Core. Sarah showed how the system could cut Peterson's operating costs by 22% while boosting production efficiency. Emily explained the pricing model, which was much more attractive than Rivercrest's offering. And James, who knew Peterson's specific pain points from years of handling their account, addressed every concern before it even came up. But when I shared my long-term vision for Phoenix, I saw the room change. We weren't just selling a system, we were offering a partnership built on continuous innovation, something Rivercrest, under my dad's leadership, always resisted. I have to say, Jessica, William commented when we wrapped up, I came expecting to listen out of politeness, but I'm genuinely impressed. You've built something extraordinary in such a short time. Actually, William, we're just getting started. What you see today is the result of ideas I've had for years, but never had the chance to fully implement. The Peterson executives left to deliberate. While we waited in the adjacent room, I got a text from Kevin, urgent call from Rivercrest. Looks like the main system is showing critical failures. 3 production lines are down. What happened? Emily asked, noticing my expression. Rivercrest is having technical issues. Apparently, the changes the new team made to the system are causing instability. James smiled subtly. Perfect timing. Anderson hates any operational inefficiency above everything else. When William came back, he looked determined. We'd like to start transitioning to Phoenix Core immediately. Our contract with Rivercrest allows cancellation with a 30-day notice in case of system failures, which, coincidentally, is happening right now. We signed the preliminary contract that afternoon. As I left Peterson's building, I felt like I was floating. It wasn't just a contract, it was validation. Proof that the value was in what I created, not in a company name or family connections. Champagne in the office, Emily announced as we walked to the parking lot. But before we could celebrate, I noticed a familiar car parked nearby. Mark was leaning by the door, his face tense. Can we talk? He asked, his usual arrogance replaced by something that almost sounded desperate. Let's go, I told my colleagues. I'll meet you in the office. Mark waited until we were alone. You knew the system was going to fail as soon as we made those modifications, didn't you? Actually, I expected you guys to be more careful, I replied honestly. That system was built layer by layer over the years. You can't just rearrange it without understanding its whole architecture. 3 of our biggest clients are now threatening to cancel their contracts, he said, running his hand through his hair. Dad's furious. And you came to ask for my help? I asked, incredulous. I came to propose a partnership, he said. Rivercrest has the infrastructure and the capital. Phoenix has the technical expertise and innovation. Together, we could. Mark, let me get this straight. You want me to rescue the company that pushed me aside after 12 years of dedication? You want me to work for the CEO who doesn't even understand the core product? Things have changed, he insisted. I realized Dad made a mistake. It should have been you. Those were the words I'd wanted to hear for weeks, yet they now felt strangely empty. I looked at the Peterson building, where we had just secured our first big client, then back at my brother, the person who represented everything I'd left behind. I need to go, Mark. We've got champagne waiting. Jessica, please. It's still the family business. I stopped and turned around. Exactly. And it will always be Dad's company, not mine. At Phoenix, I'm building something that is truly my own. While driving back to the office, where my team was waiting to celebrate, I realized something had changed inside me. I wasn't running away anymore, I was moving toward something. Phoenix wasn't just a reaction to being rejected, it was the start of a new chapter, defined on my own terms. 3 months passed in a whirlwind. Phoenix Automation Systems' official headquarters now occupied the 10th floor of a modern corporate building overlooking the city's Central Park. 52 employees, more than half of whom came from Rivercrest, worked in open, bright spaces that I personally designed to encourage collaboration and innovation. The monitor in my office showed live data, 17 active clients, including 5 that had cancelled their Rivercrest contracts. Monthly recurring revenue was approaching $1 million, and we'd seen a 230% growth in the last quarter. "We just got the external audit reports," Emily announced as she walked into my office with a folder. "We're valued at $32 million. Not bad for a company that's only been around for 3 months." "And what about the investors?" I asked as I picked up the folder. "For serious proposals. Westlake Ventures is offering $15 million for 20% of the company. Horizon Capital wants $25 million for a 30% stake. The other 2 offers aren't nearly as attractive." I studied the documents, still trying to process our meteoric rise. When I left Rivercrest, I thought we'd build something steady over the years. I never expected us to grow so rapidly. "What's your take, Emily?" She sat down across from me, thoughtful. "Honestly? We don't need the money right now. We're growing organically without burning through our capital. But a strategic partner could help us get into international markets faster." "I agree. Let's keep the conversations going, but without rushing into anything." Kevin knocked on the door, looking a bit uneasy. "Jessica, your brother is in the reception. He says he needs to talk to you urgently." I sighed and looked out the window at the city skyline. Over the past few months, I'd been getting several messages from both Dad and Mark, gradually shifting from accusations of betrayal to increasingly desperate pleas for cooperation. "All right, Kevin. Send him in." Emily got up to leave. "Do you want me to stay?" "No, thanks. I think this conversation needs to be just between us." A few minutes later, Mark walked into the office, looking different from the confident executive I'd always known. Dark circles under his eyes and a slightly rumpled expensive suit told me something was off. "This place is impressive," he said as he looked around. "It feels more like a design studio than an industrial automation company." "That was the idea," I replied. "We want people to feel creative, not just productive." An awkward silence settled between us as he sat down in the chair in front of me. "How's Dad?" I finally asked. "Not too good. He had a mini heart attack 2 weeks ago." That news hit me like a punch in the gut. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" "He didn't want you to worry. He said you didn't need to know." Typical Richard Mitchell, proud even in his most vulnerable moments. "But that's not all," Mark continued. "Rivercrest is in serious trouble. We lost 40% of our revenue over the last 2 months. The bank is threatening to foreclose on the loans if we don't stabilize by the end of the quarter." I kept my face neutral even though a part of me felt a disturbing bit of satisfaction. "Why are you telling me this, Mark?" He took a deep breath. "Because I have to admit something that I should have said from the beginning. Dad made a mistake. I made a mistake. You should have been the CEO." Finally, those words I'd been longing to hear were coming, but they felt strangely empty. "You transformed the company," he went on. "You knew every operational detail, every client, and every piece of technology. I was just following Dad's footsteps without really understanding the business. What do you want, Mark? Are you asking for my consultancy? A bailout?" "I want to propose a merger," he said directly. "Phoenix would absorb Rivercrest. You'd become the CEO of both operations. We'd keep the Rivercrest brand for the existing products while expanding under the Phoenix banner for new lines." I couldn't help but laugh incredulously. "After you pushed me aside, now you want to hand over control when the company is sinking?" "It's not about control. It's about preserving the family legacy and the jobs of over 200 people who still work there." I got up and walked over to the window, watching the city beyond. I remembered visiting the small factory Dad had just acquired when I was a kid, how proudly he talked about building something that would last for the family, and how I promised myself one day I'd lead that company. In these last 3 months, I've learned something important, Mark. I don't need the Mitchell name or Rivercrest to define who I am professionally. Phoenix is my creation, it reflects my values and my vision. So it's all about revenge then, he concluded, disappointed. You want to see Dad's company fail just to prove your point. I turned to face him. It's not revenge. It's freedom. For the first time, I'm building something that's truly mine, not trying to impress Dad or waiting for recognition that would never come. And what about the employees? The families that depend on Rivercrest? That question hit me hard. Despite everything, I still cared about the people left behind. Send me the updated financials and the employee list, I proposed after a moment of thought. I'm not promising a merger, but I will look into possible collaboration options. Maybe we can license some technology or set up a joint venture for certain projects. A relieved look crossed Mark's face. Thank you, Jessica. That means a lot. I'm not doing this for Dad or for you, I made it clear. I'm doing it for the employees who didn't have a choice in this situation. After Mark left, I stayed by the window watching the city hustle below. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Just like the fire of Phoenix, I thought. Kevin knocked on the door again. Sarah said that the new predictive module is ready for a demo whenever you have a moment. And Horizon Capital called again about the investment proposal. Thanks, Kevin. Tell Sarah I'll be there in 15 minutes. And for Horizon, schedule a call for tomorrow. After Kevin left, I opened my laptop and started typing an email to Emily and the rest of the executive team. We needed to discuss the implications of any potential collaboration with Rivercrest. This wasn't going to be an emotional decision, it had to be strategic. The next morning, our conference room was full. Emily, Sarah, James, and the other Phoenix executives were waiting as I prepared the presentation. As everyone knows, I received a proposal from Rivercrest yesterday. I began, feeling strangely detached as I mentioned the company that had been my life for so long. Before I get into the details, I want to stress something important. Phoenix isn't a transitional company or a bargaining chip. It's our vision for the future of industrial automation. I saw approving nods around the table. The proposal involves a potential merger, with Phoenix taking over operations. I crunched the numbers last night, and their situation is even worse than we thought. Rivercrest has lost 62% of its market value in the past 3 months. They're operating at reduced capacity, and several key contracts are at risk. So, it's a sinking ship, James commented. Why tie ourselves to that? That's exactly the right question, I replied. Not out of sentiment or revenge, but there are real strategic factors. They still possess manufacturing assets that would take us years to build on our own. They have relationships in markets where we haven't even established ourselves yet. Sarah adjusted her glasses. But their technology is outdated. We'd have to redo almost everything. I agree. That's why, instead of the merger, I've drafted a counteroffer. I moved on to the next slides, outlining my vision. It's a technology licensing agreement combined with a partial acquisition. We'd buy 30% of Rivercrest at a significantly reduced price, with an option to increase that stake based on performance targets. Emily reviewed the projections. That would give us access to their infrastructure without inheriting all the problems or diluting our culture. Exactly. It wouldn't be a full merger, but a carefully structured strategic alliance. We spent the next 2 hours discussing and refining the proposal. By the end, we had a plan that could add value to both companies without compromising Phoenix's independence or identity. As the team left to get on with their day, Emily stayed behind with me. You know what impresses me about this plan, she said. 6 months ago, you would have done anything just to prove your worth to Dad. Now you're making decisions based solely on business logic. I smiled, realizing how true her words were. I guess I finally found something more important than external approval. And what's that? The freedom to define my own success. That afternoon, I sent the counteroffer to Mark. It wasn't driven by anger or the need for validation, it was a sound business move that could create value for both companies. When I closed my laptop at the end of the day, I noticed the Phoenix logo on the letterhead, a bird rising from the ashes. I realized that my own transformation was reflected in that symbol. From the pain of rejection, something new and stronger had emerged. Phoenix wasn't just a company, it was a fresh start. And for the first time in my professional life, I wasn't building someone else's dream, I was creating my own legacy. Subscribe to the channel and hit like to get access to more stories like this.